Make sure to check out my Covey account, link down in the description. And check out my other series, Modern Classics and TV Treasures. I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache. And if you know nothing about me, then know this. I hate Frozen! Now I know what you're thinking. But Henry, why do you hate Frozen? Well, I'll tell you. Why do I hate Frozen so much? 2 words. Overexposure. I think it is the most overpraised, overhyped, overexposed, overrated movie to come out of the past decade. Hell, I did a top 5 list a couple years back called the top 5 movies I hate but everyone else loves. And I put this movie on number 1 on that list. To say I hate this movie would be the understatement to end all understatements. I hate the song Let It Go, and I hate every bit of content that comes out of this stupid franchise. And the merchandise. Don't even get me started on the merchandise. Everywhere I look, it is there, and I want it to die now. Everywhere I look, it is right there, and I want it to go away now. Everywhere I look, it is there in grocery stores and pharmacies. I want Disney to end this cash cow right now. Everywhere I look. I know what you're probably thinking, but why am I bringing up Frozen? Well, it's because today's movie I'm going to review is an adaptation of the story that Frozen is loosely, and I do mean loosely, based on the Snow Queen. Or better yet, USSR Snow Queen. And this film comes courtesy of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union. Birthplace is Zangief from Street Fighter 2, Gengore from Stranger Things Season 3, and Drago from Rocky 4. So let's stop wasting time and sled through this review. The film is about a girl named Gerda and a boy named Kai who get a visit from the evil Snow Queen, who causes a snowstorm and casts a spell on Kai, making him a bratty, evil asshole. The following night, the evil Snow Queen takes him to her palace. Gerda must find Kai and save him from the Snow Queen. On her journey, she meets several characters and goes on several misadventures on her journey to finding Kai at the Snow Queen's palace. So, what do I think? Well, I'll tell you. Well, I like it. It's a much more faithful adaptation of the Snow Queen than Frozen ever was. In fact, I dare say it's better than Frozen and is what Frozen should have been. The film was directed by Russian director Lev Adamant. Hopefully I did not botch that pronunciation. Who, after coming off of his short films, The Scarlet Flower, The Golden Antelope, and Cat and Dog, a very generic title if I've ever heard one, decided to adapt the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Snow Queen, taking inspiration from the New Fairy Tales first volume and getting Russian poet Nikolai Sobolovsky, which literally sounds like Mike Wazowski from Monsters, Inc., as well as Russian writer Nikolai Erkman to pan the script. Also taking inspiration from the Danish country Copenhagen, filmmakers decided to take a page out of Disney's book by rotoscoping the animation. And not only that, they decided to rotoscope almost all of the animation using an opaque projector and dressing up actors in costumes and also makeup as if they were filming an actual film. Russian actress Unina, who was also in USSR Cinderella, also did rotoscope for Gerda, and she ended up being the voice of Gerda in the Russian version. This technique of rotoscoping actors for the whole animated film would later be used in Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings and Rango. When the film finally released in 1957, the film was a critical darling, getting great reviews from the New York Times, and even Japanese animator Hayao Miyazaki considers it to be one of his favorites. It had a huge influence on him in films like Princess Mononoke. And when he retired, he actually watched The Snow Queen again and came out of retirement. So yeah, you have this film to thank for keeping Hayao Miyazaki working. We open with a shot of the book and a little man coming out of the book with a couple of umbrellas. This is Ole Lukic, who's based on a Hans Christian Andersen character, who's basically the Sandman. In this film, he's a narrator and often pops up throughout the movie, giving narration. I like this guy. He kind of gives me a Jiminy Cricket type vibe. Also worth noting, when Universal released this film, they added a lot of live action segments towards the beginning of the movie. Which, not to dunk on these segments, but they're ultimately kind of pointless. Anyway, Ole Lukic begins our story, and we cut to the house of Gerda and Kai. And yes, you heard me right. The girl's name is Gerda, not to be confused with that awful role model Elsa. Kai and Gerda give each other flowers. Kai a red flower and Gerda a white one. Gerda in the American version is played by Sandra Dee, who was also in Gidget and the remake of Imitation of Life. Kai is played by Tommy Kirk. Kai and Gerda decide to plant their white rose and their red rose together. And then winter comes, and Gerda's grandma decides to tell them the story of the evil, mysterious Snow Queen. And we cut to her palace, and we get our very first good look at her. And damn, does she have a great design with her piercing eyes.
Hi, I'm Gary.
Oh, hi, Gary.
You're reviewing the Snow Queen and yet did not ask me to take part in this review? You do know I'm a penguin, right?
I didn't know you wanted to be a part of this review. I'm sorry.
I take no offense to it.
So, you got anything to say on the Snow Queen's behalf or her design?
Whoa! Even Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin will say that she is cool.
That she looks like a sculpture made out of ice. The Snow Queen decides to get up and look into her magic mirror. And she sees Gerda and Kai. And Kai makes a insult towards her. And this is what ticks her off. In fact, she's so sore that she actually takes her staff and breaks her mirror and demands the north winds to go to Kai and take her to him. You know, for an all-powerful being, she sure has her sense of insecurity. And the wind blows her all the way to Gerda and Kai's house, and she imitates that scene from Vampire. She blows her icy breath onto the window. They try to close it, but Kai gets a shard in his eye, which puts him under a spell and starts causing him to act like a little brat ball. Seriously, he steps on Gerda and his flowers. Gerda goes running to her grandma and cries in her lap. And then we cut to the next day. And this is probably a good time to talk about the animation. It often feels like a silly symphony short, but put on a grander scale. And the backgrounds are very detailed. Okay, back to the story. We see Kai acting like a piece of crap to Gerda, puts her on his sled, and throws her off, and laughs about it. He goes to break a cold one with the boys, only for the Snow Queen to show up on her sled and take Kai away. They go dashing through the snow, and Gerda witnesses it. The Snow Queen decides to take Kai and kisses him on the forehead, making Kai even worse than he was before. Gerda decides the next day to go looking for him, and she goes on a boat, and she arrives in a house with wooden soldiers, of all things. Man, does the Toy Master from Any Babes in Toyland live in this house? Nope, it belongs to a woman who just so happens to be a sorceress. And she ends up taking Gerda in and putting her to sleep by combing her hair, which causes a spell that makes her forget about Kai. She's not a bad character, but she's not exactly a good one either. I feel like this character was done way better in the Shelley Duvall Fairy Tale Theater episode of The Snow Queen. In that version, Gerda gets her memory back rather quickly and chews the sorceress out for putting that spell on her to make her forget Kai. She said she only wanted to love her, but then Gerda says, "If you wanted to love me, then you'll help me." But no, we don't get anything like that for this character. This character just disappears and we never see her again. Oh well, but at least we got a song that was only in the Universal version of the Snow Queen. Gerda's song, While You're Young. Cut to Gerda sitting on a seashore and a crow, or I think it's a crow, it could be a raven, correct me on that. Gerda tells him about a boy, but only giving the description of what he looks like, not his name. That boy being, of course, Kai. They meet up with another crow and think that Kai is in the castle. So they sneak in to the castle and they go into a room and oops, it's not Kai, it's a prince. The jig is up and the princess is saying, "Guards, guards." Cue the Benny Hill soundtrack. After all that crap slows down, they get captured and Gerda apologizes to the prince about her and her friends. And they pretty much let them go, and Gerda tells them about her story in Kai. They send her on her way in a golden carriage, only for bandits who show up and they hijack the carriage. They decide to steal all the gold off the carriage, leaving not one carat behind. Not only do they steal the gold, but they capture Gerda and decide to cook her. But thankfully, she's saved by the robber's daughter, who I'll refer to as the little robber girl. Yeah, that's what she's called in the book as well. And she's my favorite character. She acts all tough, but really on the inside, she's a softie. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. She steals all her stuff, like her mittens and her hat, and she takes her. And this is where we get our next song, which I'll just call the Robber's Song.
We are a one-some, we are a two-some, we're a group of three. We are a foursome, and there are moresome, jolly robbers we.
Cut to the robber's hideout, and then the robber girl takes Gerda to see her pets, which includes a reindeer, rabbits, a fox, and she adds her to her collection. Gerda tells the story of Kai to the little robber girl. And we get a party in the background. So it's party time. After the robber girl hears the story of Kai, she says, "They're not going to kill you. If anyone's going to kill you, it will be me." And she hugs Gerda, only for the doves to tell her that they know where Kai is, and so does the reindeer. The little robber girl tells the reindeer that if he takes Gerda to the Snow Queen, she'll let him go free. And she lets Gerda go and gives her back her hat and her mittens. She cuts the rope and lets them go. So, they're off, only for her to say goodbye and say she'll never forget her. And they go on their way. And this is where we get to see the little robber girl's soft spot as she starts crying and lets her pets go. They, of course, leave the moment they are released, but you think they're going to leave her? Nope. What do you think? They come back and they comfort her while she's crying. It turns out she was a softie after all. And the little robber girl's heart grew 3 sizes that day or night. On her way, she meets a fisherwoman who tells Gerda that she's seen Kai and the Snow Queen. So she sends her to her cousin, writing a note on a fish of all things, and she gives her this fish and she sends her off. She collapses in front of the fisherwoman's cousin, who brings her inside and warms her up. And is it just me, or does she sound like Witch Hazel? I guess it makes sense. June Forain does do voices in this movie.
What's there stronger than she? What's stronger than love? I'm going to worm all of your ugly secrets out of you. Tell me now, who undoes your hair?
There's going to be spoilers, so if you don't want this film spoiled for you, skip to this time code. Gerda gets better again, and she's on her way. Cut to the Snow Queen's palace, where we see Kai putting a puzzle together, and we get a pretty depressing and almost somber scene where Gerda is trying to connect with Kai, but Kai doesn't remember her. And Kai is telling her to go away, and she's crying. And then Kai's icy heart starts to melt, and the shard falls out of his eye, restoring him to normal. Oh, glory be! But their happy reunion is short-lived, as the big bad Snow Queen shows up, and Gerda tells her, "Go away! I'm not afraid of you! Go away! He's mine!" And thankfully, Spring hears her pleas, and the Snow Queen's icy heart melts away. We end as we begin with Gerda's and Kai's flowers. Until the next review, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off.